What is it like to work at the White House? Well, it'd be quite interesting depending on what president it would be, I would assume. But we'll tell you on this episode.
We get some rum and beer, expensive, parked in a reindeer, so you know we're gonna party till
Welcome
tomorrow.
to the Marine Conservation Happy Hour. This is Dr. Scarlett Smash, and I'm here with Dr. Craken. Dr. Craken is tending to a cold. He needs Indian food.
Poorly.
That is the cure. All those spices, and get some chai.
I
Okay,
have
masala
man
chai,
flu,
and then you'll
the
be fine. No,
most severe of
don't
all
even.
blues.
And you know what he's doing? He's drinking cocoa. Anyways, let's move on. Oh my God, we've been doing this all day long. Let me not get off. I'm on a tangent. We've got Alyssa Scott in the house, our guest. Whoop, whoop. All right, Alyssa, crab eater seal specialist, but also you had an incredible experience working at the White House. So first, introduce yourself. Second, let's talk about why and how you got that.
Fair questions. Yeah.
Seriously, who did you dance in front of to get that? I mean, like, I tried multiple times. No one got me.
It's so funny. Yeah, I don't know how I got so lucky. It kind of just fell into my lap, too. It was very, very random. So I'm a PhD student. I study crab eater seals. So last year I went down with my two advisors, Dr. Louise Hugstadt and Dr. Michael Tift. We went down to the Western Antarctic Peninsula to go see some crab eater seals and do some procedural work. And while I was on that trip, I got an email. And yeah, you can get emails in Antarctica, even though the Wi-Fi is kind of crap, but you can get them. And I got an email, which is like, just so you know, like the White House accepts like paid interns. You might be interested. And I said, oh, that's an interesting thought.
Wait a minute, just a random email, or who was this email from?
The department had sent around this like something like the Department for University of North Carolina, Wilmington, the university I go to. I just like put out a call that like this application thing was open, and I have always had an interest in policy, more specifically like intersection between policy and science, and honestly wanting to make a change in the sense of like making sure that policymakers are utilizing good science and that scientists are communicating their science effectively and concisely in a way that policymakers can digest effectively. And so I said, what other better place is there to go learn how those two may interact?
Or not.
If not high government. And so, yeah, or not. Good follow-up. And that's something that I learned. And so I applied to the chagrin of my advisors. But once I got into it, we had a conversation. They were very encouraging. So yeah, I got back from Antarctica and then immediately moved to Washington, D.C. And thus began an incredible, incredible journey.
Okay, wait, hold on. I want to feel this experience because a lot of us are not going to have it. Okay. So the application process, I've applied to something very small back in the day.
I did a AAAS fellowship. They give you the choice of Congress or the executive branch.
Yeah,
So I ended
so
up working for NSF.
All the hoops, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of hoops. I mean, they want to know everything about you, right?
Yes, yeah. They
The
will
foot size, right?
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
on your
they-
application too?
I'm sure it was. They want to know all of my exes. They want to know what my sister's best friend's name is. They want to know anybody I've ever talked to, and they will do background research on every single person
That's
that I've ever met.
crazy.
I had to list all the countries I'd traveled to over the last
Yeah,
10
don't even ask.
years.
Don't even ask Dr.
Oh my
Craken to do
goodness.
something like that.
Yeah.
All right, but here, come on, keep on going because I want to know what about the interview process.
Yeah, so the application was pretty straightforward, just like, everything you've done, CV, cover letter, I'm sure. And then, of course, just like the many, many forms of just my background and people I know exactly. And then, yeah, I got offered an interview. And so at that point, it seems that like the offices that are in the executive branch, so there's a whole bunch of different offices. There's like the offices of the vice president, the office of climate change, or office of clean energy, innovation and implementation, a whole bunch. And so the directors of those offices essentially get all these applications, and then they can choose who they want in their office. And so I was offered to chit chat with the Office of Clean Energy, Innovation and Implementation, which is a new office that
It was a closet office. You guys were like stuck in a little corner. Again, monumental.
It was actually a pretty big office, but yeah. And so I was interviewing with the director of the office and one of the other teammates, and it went easily. And then they essentially offered it to me right then and there.
Okay, rewind. I need more.
Okay.
Going in, do you like go, like, do you park on the side of the street like normal people and walk up to the front door? Do you go like down to the basement? What do they do? I need to know all of this. I'm never going to experience this, even though I have lots of dreams about Obama and Michelle all the time coming and saying, Dr. Scarlett Smash. Hey, I'm not joking. But anyways, continue.
So the interview was via Zoom. So I had literally, I think I had gotten back from Antarctica the day after. Like I remember in my interview saying, I got back from Antarctica yesterday. And so, yeah, I was actually in Arizona. I had just come back to my parents' place. They were watching my dog. So it was via Zoom. But yeah, and then I got offered it and had a chit chat with Mike and Luis and then moved out. And yeah, so the first day of showing up to the White House is exactly as surreal as you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, come on, give it to us.
Every entrance to get into the White House essentially has like a TSA. You have to go through the most thorough security you could imagine. So going through that and then entering, and I don't even know how to describe it. It's not what you expect, to be quite honest. Like I have images of what the White House looks like in like media, right? I know what White House looks like. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's my image.
No, it's so small. It's a lot smaller than I would imagine it being. And so that was interesting.
And is it smell like old? I always wondered if like the offices kind of smell old still because of how old that place is, you know, kind of like musty and
that's such a good question.
Building.
They have cleaners.
I mean, does it smell like old government building smell?
So the building that I worked in like most days was right next to the White House. So we definitely went into the White House. But right next to it is the EEOB, the Executive Eisenhower Office Building. And that has been proclaimed to be like one of the ugliest structures in the United States. And supposedly the architect killed himself inside of it because he was like so hurt by people not loving the architecture of the building. It's pretty, I don't know what the word would be.
Tragic.
Medieval looking. It's an interesting building. You should look it up.
It's a vibe.
But fascinating. One of my favorite facts about working at EEOB and the White House for that matter, the floor has fossils scattered all throughout. Like these really beautiful ammonite fossils, like truly cool. Millions of years old, are just scattered throughout the floors.
Besides the fossils wandering around in Congress.
Yeah. So like midday, I would just like need a break and I would just like go do some loops and I would just go stare at the fossils and just like go and play with them. Yeah. So that was one of my favorite facts. The fact that like I was so far away from the ocean and yet here it was. And I was like, this is what I'm working for, is all these fossils kind of really.
And so what did your job entail?
Oh yeah, I guess we could talk about that too. Duh.
So the office that I was in was called the Office of Clean Energy Innovation and Implementation. And it was principled by John Podesta, who is now actually the climate advisor for the US. He just took John Kerry's spot. And so John Podesta, really amazing climate activist his entire career, truly a fantastic guy, was one of the leaders in writing the Inflation Reduction Act, also known as the IRA, which is one of the biggest investments in climate change that we've ever had in the US. And so within the Inflation Reduction Act is a whole bunch of movements to essentially increase clean energy, reduce climate change effects on communities, a whole bunch. It's truly a lengthy process and document. And so essentially that office, our effort was to implement everything that was in the IRA. So some of the projects that I was helping work on it's truly so expansive. One of them was at Columbia River, if you guys are familiar, the river that is kind of in between Washington and Oregon. There's been an ongoing effort to remove some of the dams for the salmon. That's been an issue, specifically more in relation to the southern resident killer whales that live in that area. They predate upon salmon that comes from that river. And so that was one of the projects I was helping with. We really want to make sure that there's people above me that like I am kind of feeding them the information. So I was doing a lot more of the background research giving them my intake, my input, and then passing it on to them to kind of make those policy decisions. And so that was kind of like my role, was kind of doing more of the background research, making sure that the policy implementers were as best informed as I possibly could make them. And so, yeah, that was kind of more of my day to day. Some of the things that I would help with was just creating some, how would I put it? Some resources to manage like marine protected areas. There's some new marine protected areas that might be coming out. And so kind of just doing some research on those.
We could do an episode on that too. Gosh.
Right.
Now, did you have to do these sort of briefers where you condense all this research down to like 3 sentences and you have to get all this information? Because the high ups are just going to glance at this and then they go off and they make
but the
speeches and decisions.
documentation has to be a lot. Like that, the backup, the support. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things that I really took away while working there was a few things. One, the people that work in the executive branch are some of the most hardworking people I have ever met. And I say that coming from academia, where people are like not paid very well and they work insane hours.
Yeah.
The people that are working in the executive branch, the people that are at the White House every day, I feel good about. I have my own gripes with the current political situation, but I feel so strongly and so supported by the people that work in that building. They care so much. And that was such a good thing for me to realize. Coming from like, I grew up hearing the cacophony of just like climate change perils and just like feeling this overwhelming sense of just like, oh, we're screwed. And it was, I think, for the first time in my life while working at the White House, I was like, oh, people are actually doing things and it's just not communicated in the daily media. And so that was like a really good thing for me to understand. But yeah, so going back to what your question was, I was definitely condensing things for people. One of the other things that I learned while working there is that they have a completely different vocabulary than what I'm used to. So like, for example, they would be like, give me the top lines, give me the top lines. And I'm like, I don't know. You mean like bottom line? You want the bottom? And they were like, top lines. And so essentially top line, bottom line, same thing to them. And so it's just like your condensed version. Like if everybody else was busy, I would go sit in on a meeting, essentially take notes, come up to the team and be like, X, Y, and Z, this is what we need to get done. Give them the top lines. So yeah, definitely trying to condense.
I used to love doing that sort of things. Go for like a 3-day meeting and then tell the boss the 3 most important sentences. But then seeing some of these people just take this minimal amount of information and then immediately go into action. It was always very impressive.
Yep. I could not agree with you more. Yep.
I love
for
that.
sure.
That's awesome. Okay, but what about presidents? Did you see one? They walk around in they go into these offices in the environmental closet and say hello.
For sure. So Secret Service will surround them. So it's not easy to go hang out with
a
Biden.
Bubble, huh?
Yeah. So like, even though like in theory, I am working next to Biden physically most days, unless
you were in the office with Biden.
I was technically next door most days, but he like in the EEOB, which is right next to the White House.
So you're in like Biden's garage.
Yeah.
He's in the house. You're in the garage. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in the garage giving him the top lines. I like that. That's really funny. But of course, he would have to come into like the building and like do his meetings or whatever. And actually, right next to my office was one, I think it was called the diplomat room, very commonly used room for high level meetings. And so very often I would just like open up the door and I'm like, oh, there's Secret Service, like, 20 suited people. And I'm like, oh, Biden's right next
door. Let me hold my
Kamala.
pee because I can't go down the hallway right now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The Secret Service is all down the hallway right now, and I'm gonna have to just hold my pee for a minute. And okay, so when was this again?
I was there from September through December, so I was there all
recently.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, now then I need to ask you a real good question because election is happening. I'm not going to get into politics, but I just want to know: is he super feeble and kind of like about to fall over, or is this just media?
I thought he was a very well put together guy. They have interns come in every few months, essentially, to help out with everyone's projects. And every time that there's new cohort students or interns, whatever you want to call them, we're all from different walks of life, so I hesitate to say students.
Mm-hmm.
We would like get to meet Biden, like one-on-one, shake hands,
Mhm,
you know, the whole shebang.
Mhm.
And so we met him. He was great. He gave us like a nice little speech of just like being encouraging and like calling us like the next generation of climate leaders. But also we met Jill. Jill knocked my socks off. She
I bet.
is
I
a
bet.
powerhouse.
Yes.
Like
I bet.
she was amazing. But no, they were both super great. So amazing.
Okay.
Kamala
Okay,
was
so he wasn't like falling over, like
No, he was fine.
Everyone I know who works there says he's totally with it, and witty, and has comebacks.
you
and
see the worst things on social media, man. It looks like he's
don't believe so. Yeah, don't believe it.
it's all over the place. It's sad. It's sad.
Who is the favorite politician that you met? Who was like the sort of nicest
Ooh, that's
people?
a good question.
Oh, that's a really great question.
Other than Jill.
Other than Jill, yeah, seriously. Kamala was really wonderful too. We got to meet her one-on-one, and she was just as amazing as I could possibly have imagined. But I feel like people that I got to know the best is like while I was there, we were encouraged to get coffees. That's a very DC thing, is what I
I
grew to
know. It's so
understand.
expensive. You're like, God,
So
another $10 coffee? Really?
Or
More than
virtual
that.
coffees.
Yeah.
I'm like
yeah.
on intern money. Why am I going to coffees all the time? God.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It also made me feel like a little grimy personally. Just like, I don't know. I don't love reaching out to people for like my own benefit, which is how it was definitely made to
The
seem.
schmoozing, yes.
Yeah,
The connecting, the schmoozing.
Smooze is a
Glad handing, whatever you call it, yes.
So I was lucky to meet a lot of people, but going back to John Podesta, it's incredible. That man has had a career. He actually had retired. So he was part of Obama's team initially. Can't remember what position. And then once Obama left the office, John Podesta retired. And when Biden came into office, Biden reached out personally to Podesta and said, hey, can you come back and help me run this new office and make sure the implementation of the IRA happens? And so to meet this man who, should be retired, like he's lived his good long life. He has had a career.
1949. He's a silent generation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've just had to look him up.
But he was a powerhouse, truly. And like it was known throughout the building. Like if you need something done, you ask John. It's so amazing. And he was so encouraging, so personable. Would just like chat with me on the daily. Just, how's it going, Alyssa? How's the seals?
That's so sweet.
Yeah. I felt really lucky to have gotten to work with him so closely, for sure.
Just in case people, this is John Podesta, right? Was the senior executive of the president for clean energy innovations and implementation. Oh, he still is. He still's working.
So yeah, he actually I think it was announced just a few months ago that he's going to be leaving that position relatively soon. And he's taking over John Kerry's position as, I think, the climate advisor.
Yeah.
Which is pretty incredible. So yeah, he has no intention of going back to retire.
I'm telling you, 75 is like, no one retires at 75 anymore. It's like the new 50s, I guess.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah.
You just wonder when we get to that age, how we're going to be like running marathons.
John runs to work every day. He ran to the White House every day from his place. It's incredible.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I don't know. I'm not going to have that level of energy when I'm his age. I just know.
Oh, I will. I'm already there. Already there. There's nothing that's going to stop me. Even death is like, oh God, let's prepare for this one. I don't know if we even want her because she's got so much energy.
Yeah, Death's
Leave
going to
her
look at you and go, oh, no, hang on.
Leave her be.
Yeah, she's too much for me. So all this positivity. Whew.
I know. Yeah. What is this?
What is this?
Nut.
We don't need another Care Bear.
Oh, I love Care Bears. I love them. They're so cute. All right. Well, we thank you so much, Alyssa, for coming on the show. This was fun. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. Now I don't feel so depressed.
Good.
You know, there are good people and smart people doing things.
People are making changes, and that is what I hope people can, try to grasp, because I understand it. Like, I see the same media, I see the same news everyone else is seeing, and it does not feel good.
No,
Most days I wake up with a huge sense of doom, and then I have to remind myself people are making changes, and that gives me a sense of relief.
Yeah,
for sure.
Swan's feet paddling under the water.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a duck. You don't see the feet running, but they're moving.
But they're running. And they move on very slowly.
Yeah.
Adorable, for sure. That is so cute. Well, thank you again both for being on the show. And for everyone that's listening, thank you so much for being part of the Marine Conservation Happy Hour crew.
This is the Marine Conservation Happy Hour podcast. This podcast is produced and edited by Absolutely Smashing Events and Consulting. The music in this episode is by Jolly Shore Leave. If you're interested in sponsoring an episode, or you would like us to show up for a special event, email us at info@absolutelysmashingllc.com.